Hi everyone, this is Sarah again. So I wanted to talk a little bit today about my exercise trauma. This goes back to middle school and then most recently to when I broke my foot last December. So kind of bear with me, this is a little bit of a long story. So it kind of starts with when my parents moved from where I went to elementary school to where we went to middle school. So we went basically from one side of Sacramento to another. And it was largely because my grandmother wanted us to be closer to where she was so that she could have a hand in helping raise us. In other words, so that she could basically meddle. So I went from being able to ride my bike, play outdoors, basically spend any day that it wasn't actively raining outside playing. And so I was not super athletic, but I was a relatively healthy kid. I didn't really struggle with my weight or anything like that. And then when I changed to living near them, everything changed. I no longer had access to a bike, and even if I did, my grandmother was uncomfortable with a girl riding by herself in the neighborhood, even though the neighborhood we were in was safer and nicer than the one that I grew up in. So I couldn't ride my bike, I couldn't walk to the park by myself. I was eating more because my grandmother would make big meals after school. So, I put on weight. And I was also a late bloomer. So I didn't start menstruating until I was 14. Little bit of information there. So I was actually pretty late on a lot of those, hallmarks for growing up. And so it took me a while to lose a lot of that, baby fat, as it were. So by the time I was in middle school and the later part of it, I was pretty chubby. Had a lot of facial fat, things like that. And I got a horrible bob haircut, which does not look good on me at all. So that didn't help things either. So, in order to try to deal with this, my grandmother started by taking us to the gym a couple times a week, and that was fine. We would play racquetball, swim. I learned how to use all the weights. I learned how to use the machines. It was actually kind of fun. I didn't mind it. And then they decided that that wasn't enough. So they decided they wanted me to do taekwondo with my sisters and my cousins. I had no interest. None. Zero. Zip. Nada. And after a month of basically being bullied by my parents and grandparents, I ended up being told that I had to do it and I had no option. So that started my journey into not liking exercise. So they kind of took away the things that I liked doing and then started piling things I didn't like doing. And instead of doing something like dancing or fencing, which I would have been very interested in, they chose something that I wasn't just because everybody else in the family was doing it already. At least the boys were. And so I kind of got bullied into that. And then I, went for a couple of years doing that. And, it wasn't all bad. But there was just that tinge of having been told I had to do it that kind of colored it and made it not as enjoyable as if I decided it for myself. Same thing with the gym eventually. It was less that in and of itself it was bad. It was just that I didn't make that decision for myself. They made it for me. And, I probably would be okay except for the last piece of the puzzle, which is swim team. So my grandmother was adamant and hounded me about joining a sport in high school. Everything, she went through the list. She started with cheerleading, which is only it's a sport, though it's not always viewed that way. A lot of acrobatics and stuff. But she was a cheerleader. Not interested. And eventually she settled on swim team because I like to swim. Always have. So I decided, okay, fine, it'll get her to stop. So I joined swim team, and it was 2 hours after school of practice every day. So 10 hours of practice a week. I was in honors classes, full course. Pretty much the only class that wasn't honors was my PE class, which basically meant I was exercising 11 hours, plus 2 days of gym, plus I was still doing 2 days of Taekwondo, and the only day that I didn't do that thing, or didn't do extra, was when I was taken to various other events that they wanted to go to. So I didn't have a lot of extra time to do homework. I struggled, my grades dropped, and I had a lot of stuff going on at home. My parents expected me to do a lot of the chores, help with dinner, things like that. That was always part of, taking care of my sisters, taking care of the house, taking care of everyone else. That's just how I felt that I had to do things. And it ended up with me getting stressed to the point of suicidal ideation. So I told people about it, went and saw a psychologist, and finished out my year of swim team. I completed it, was told by the coach that he didn't expect me to go through it. He said in front of everybody when handing out awards, to the girl I thought wouldn't make it. Isn't that exciting? So yeah, that was not cool. So I pretty much shut down after that. I went through the motions of going to the gym. I went through the motions of going to Taekwondo. It kind of got a little bit better for Taekwondo because one of the guys that also went to my high school. We were dating for a bit. So that was nice, and it made it bearable. But I never quite got my stride back. And I never wanted to work out again for 10 years. A decade. It wasn't until I was about 28, moved to Nevada, and started walking with my dogs and things like that, where I started realizing that it wasn't bad if I could do it on my terms and do things that I enjoyed. So that was kind of the turning point. I started to get better, and then we moved a couple of times. We had bought a house, got a different job, and the amount of exercise I did dropped again. And then last December, as I said, I broke my foot, which meant that I was completely unable to do just about anything for 6 weeks. And then I had a limp for another month. So it's just starting to get to the point where I can walk without a noticeable limp. So all these things have kind of contributed to why I am trying to approach it in a different way and kind of move past that, mental trauma as well as the physical one to better myself going forward. So that's kind of my story as to why I am trying to remotivate myself and change how I do things. So consider subscribing, and thank you everyone for listening to my little story. And have a good day. Bye.